Good afternoon. I'm Mary Ann Johnson. I'm the co-chair of the Healthcare Committee, along with Dr. Seghetti. Many of you know I'm a practicing family practitioner, and I thought this session might be really informational on end of life, because this is something nobody wants to do, but everybody should do, because it makes everything so much easier for those that are left behind, so to speak. It's a good idea also to review things periodically. As a family practitioner, I have walked families through this with no preparation. I have walked families through this with preparation. And as Debbie, who is our second speaker, will attest to, she has walked through this before my husband's death with both of us and through his death. And trust me, it makes it so much easier. We have a few housekeeping things. This is being taped. It will be on the Hot Topics app, and it's under a section there called Informational, and that will also be put on the TV for if anyone needs to look at this in the future. It is being live streamed, and we are going to allow a few questions after each section. There is informational material in the back, and there are contacts for everyone that is speaking today. So since this is a very personal nature, you're free to take their cards, contact them, make your own appointments, and discuss your own personal issues and case and decisions individually. So with that, I want to thank Thomas Ward and his son, Scott Ward, for coming. They're our estate planning attorneys. Thomas graduated from Virginia Tech, so we have a Hokie here, and then the University of Richmond, and his son, Scott, graduated from UVA, so we do have a Cavalier, and then the Cumberland School of Law at Samford University. So I would like to introduce them, and they're going to go give us an overview of estate planning.
Thank you all for coming. We are a father and son.
Closer to the microphone.
Can you hear me now?
Closer.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. We're a father and son team of lawyers that help people with their personal planning. I've done it for 62 years. Scott and I took it on together 15 years ago, and this is what we do, and it is very satisfying because we're talking to people about the things that really matter to them, their families, their children, grandchildren, their financial security, and what they want to do for others, and what they want done for them when they can't do for themselves. This is not going to be a technical presentation, but we're going to talk to you about things that everybody needs and how to go about arranging them. We're going to talk about documents that everyone needs, because there will come a time in everyone's life when someone else has to act for them in managing their financial affairs. So, starting place is a power of attorney. Now, a power of attorney is a document by which you authorize someone else to act for you in financial matters. If you can't yourself, the individual or individuals you name can act for you in paying bills, moving money around, handling property. Powers of attorney in Virginia are what are called durable. That is, they don't cease to be effective if you become incapacitated. So when you name somebody power of attorney, they can act for you if you can't. I'll say this, power of attorney is a loaded gun. You should give it to someone whom you trust, and only to someone you trust. Another thing I'll mention to you is that banks, particularly the big banks, have become very finicky about accepting your power of attorney. They are subject to so much regulation, and particularly under the money laundering rules, that they are jittery about accepting your power of attorney. So if you have someone that you have a connection with a bank, and you expect to use a power of attorney with that bank, you'd best go talk to them if you can get somebody to talk to you. Problem with the large banks today is a lot of them want you to talk to a computer instead of a human being. Another thing that everyone needs is called an advance medical directive. And that is a document that does two things. If you are not able to communicate with a medical caregiver because of your own incapacity, you authorize someone else to do it. So if a doctor says there are three courses of treatment that we could give for this, which one do you want us to use? That person would make that choice for you. Here again, you want to be very careful who you name. People quite frequently name their children or spouse and children to make that sort of decision. We frequently say, I want to name my children A, B, and C, those who are willing and available to act, because it may need to be done on short order, and if someone's not available, you don't want the doctor to say, well, I've got to talk to C before I can do this, and A and B are here, but C's not. Again, you want to be careful who you do it. Now, the other thing you need, there's a law called HIPAA, and that's a law that says you have to be very careful about, if you're a medical provider, who you give information about someone. And the HIPAA form is one that authorizes a doctor or other caregiver to talk to family members that you specify about your medical condition. Sometimes that's included in the advanced medical directive, sometimes it's done separately, sometimes it's done both ways, but you'll want one of those. The next thing you'll want to make is a will. A will is a document that says how assets you own that are in your sole name pass in the event of your death. Quite often, a will is combined with a revocable trust agreement. And often when that's done, the will says, I give any assets that are in my individual name to the trustee under my revocable trust agreement. The trustee under the revocable trust agreement is most often the person who's making the trust agreement himself. So as long as the person has capacity, they're their own trustee. It then has provisions that says how, if that person is incapacitated, you name successor trustee to take your place. It can be your spouse, it can be children, it can be a financial institution that has trust powers, it can be a law firm that has trust powers. But that again is a selection you want to make very carefully. Not everyone needs a revocable trust. Some people's affairs are simple enough that they use beneficiary designation forms with financial institutions to say where their assets are going to go. They rely on the power of attorney to deal with the incapacity, and they rely on beneficiary designation forms. and sometimes joint with survivor or tenancy by the entirety account designations. And I'm going to let Scott talk to you about those types of accounts and what are some of the advantages and disadvantages of one over another. And a very important thing to think about, and bankers often don't really know about this, is the difference that the kind of account you use can mean about whether the assets you have in an account get a new cost basis in the event of your death. You've heard the phrase step up in cost basis, and that is a provision in the law that says if you own an asset and you die owning it or die owning it in your own revocable trust, it gets a new cost basis based on what it's worth when you die. Now, some things don't get a new cost basis. IRAs and 401k benefits don't get a new cost basis. But a stock portfolio gets a new stock basis. And which type of account you use can make a difference about whether you get a full step up in basis or just half. And Scott, I'm going to turn it over to you from there.
Okay, he was talking about your accounts that you could make joint, and he referenced tenants by the entirety, accounts that often or have to be between a husband and wife. They provide creditor protection, and banks sometimes don't bring that up and giving you that as a selection as a way to own your assets, but that provision gives you creditor protection, and at the death of the first spouse, the assets pass to the surviving spouse's name.
Then the creditor protection is against a creditor. The creditor protection is against the creditor of a single spouse. So assets that are in a tenancy by the entirety account can't be attached by a creditor who's a creditor of just one spouse. If the creditor is a creditor of both spouses, for example, if both spouses signed a note, they can be reached.
And this is true for your checking accounts, certificates of deposit, and your brokerage and other custody security accounts. The other types of accounts, or my dad referenced earlier, ways that you can designate your accounts is payable on death or transfer on death accounts. And in some situations, that's just fine. And there are, and he knows I preach this all the time, I'm not encouraging my clients oftentimes to do that beyond the spouse that they're married to, because if they name their children as the beneficiaries and that one of their children dies, there may not be a provision in there about what happens to a child's share. For instance, if a parent died with 3 children, had named the 3 children as the equal beneficiaries of an account, and one of those children had died, there may not be a provision in a payable on death account or transfer on death account which says that that child's share should go to his descendants.
Some accounts do provide that it can pass on to descendants, some do not. You have to be careful with the particular financial institution or brokerage house about how that works.
Okay, you want to go there? I don't know where we're going there. You talking about?
We talked about basis step up. Let's take a situation, I'll give you an example. One spouse has had a concentrated portfolio in a particular company. Perhaps it was a company that a father worked for or had invested in, and there's a large concentration with a very low cost basis. and the husband, let's say, owns it. If the husband puts that in a joint with survivorship account or a tenancy by the entirety account with the spouse and then dies, there'll only be a step up in basis for half of that. Whereas if it had been left in the owning spouse's name, transferable on death to the other spouse, there would be a full step up in cost basis. And that can make a lot of difference these days because there are lots of folks that own securities, have owned them for a long time, and they may have a cost basis of $1 a share and be worth $300 a share. Apple, for example, Microsoft. So if you're talking to your broker or your banker about putting assets in joint names or transferable on death to a beneficiary, be sure to consider the basis step up implications of that. This last thing I urge all of you to do, something we see more and more, and it's a terrible thing to come across, is fraud committed on us as we get older. And I'm probably older than 90% of the people I'm talking to. But when you have other people dealing with your finances, your accountant, your broker, your banker, a friend, anyone who's helping you with finances, be sure there's more than one person monitoring what's going on. If you rely only on one person, that person, if dishonest, and you may not know the person is dishonest, can commit fraud so many different ways you can't believe it. I'll give you an example, a very sad example. This was happened with a client of mine who did not live in Virginia, but he had an accountant that he completely trusted. The accountant got him to give him an IRS form of power of attorney that gave him the ability to tell the IRS where to send refunds. He had the client pay in large amounts when the company was sold to cover expected capital gains on assets that he had in an account. And the accountant went in and used that power of attorney to direct the refunds he was due because he'd overpaid. The accountant had him overpay his estimates. And he got those estimate payments to come back. The accountant put them in a fraudulent account he'd set up under a power of attorney using the client's name and a different account number, and stole $9 million from him doing that. Fortunately, he was able to get some of it back when the accountant died in an accident. But that happens, that sort of thing happens all the time. So have more than one person looking at your accounts. If you're relying on someone, you have 2 children that you trust, get copies of your financial statements sent to them both so they can watch and see that money's not being siphoned off.
Many of my clients' cases, their children have access electronically to their accounts, and they monitor them regularly.
We'd be happy to answer questions.
If you raise your hand, we've got people with mics that'll come around if anybody has a question.
How is step-up in basis handled for trust assets?
If you create a trust that is revocable by you and put your own assets in it, at your death, the assets in that trust will get a step up or step down in basis to what they are worth when you die. If you put it in a joint account with someone, only half of it will get a step up or step down in basis. And that's half of each share. So if you were expecting to be able to sell to pay expenses without paying any capital gains tax, your basis step up would not be the full amount. It would be only half of that amount. And that can be a big disappointment and a big mistake. Want to give her a
Question about power of attorney. As to copy versus original, do you have to have an original of the power of attorney when you try to implement any aspect of it?
Ordinarily, a bank will want to see and put on file, they'll want to see a signed original, but will often accept a PDF copy sent by computer as long as it's notarized.
So we should all go to our bank or our credit company.
Well,
and get this-
whoever you're gonna, who has an account that you expect the power of attorney to be used to deal with, write checks from and so forth, that institution has to see the power of attorney and accept it before they will accept the signature of the person you've named to act for you.
And the medical directives, when you're in the hospital, you just have a copy?
Yes, we generally recommend that you sign at least 5 copies of that medical directive, and generally they will be accepted if they're PDF copies sent by email. And they're signed with 2 witnesses in addition to the person who's given the medical directive.
It's most important to provide that advanced medical directive to your primary care physician, because they can email or send by fax that document to any doctor or hospital that they need to. And they will accept it.
I have a number of children, but two of the girls are to be my executors. And one of them lives in California, and one lives here. They both have accounts in the same bank that I do. So, and they both are on all of my accounts, as in terms of in terms of what they do. But what I want to know is this, is the fact that the one daughter is in California, is that going to create a problem?
The only problem it might cause you is if the other daughter is not available to act with her, the one who is a Virginia resident. She may have to provide corporate surety on her bond if she becomes an executor by herself in Virginia. And what we often provide in the document is that a person who's named as executor can name someone else to act with them as a co-executor. If you do that, then the daughter who's a California resident could qualify and name an accountant or a friend in Virginia to be a co-executor and avoid having corporate surety.
or her husband died, and there was no liquidity. There was no, the credit cards were canceled by, don't know. And so how do you protect that when a spouse or daughter is left money, but there's no liquid funds, period, and the trust hadn't been opened? So how do they have any cash to run on until all the estate is settled?
Well, if there is a joint account with that individual or a payover on death account to that individual, all they will have to do is give a death certificate to the financial institution where that account is, and they can get money out of that account. But if you say there's no liquidity in the sense that that person just doesn't have any money, I don't know how to make money when there isn't any. They may have to borrow or advance funds. You can advance funds, for example, to pay someone's funeral expenses, and you can be repaid later out of their estate. Don't necessarily advise doing it, but it can be done.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
We're going to go. The next segment is going to be talking about DNRs, which are do not resuscitate orders, and advanced directives. And Debbie Griffith, who is at Henrico Doctors Hospital, who I've known for a number of years, and has worked with the Richmond Academy of Medicine with Honoring Choices and Honoring Virginia, has a presentation about advanced directives along with Honey Ray, and we will also touch on exactly what a DNR is, its implications, and what you need to have on you if you were found unresponsive in order for that to occur. So I'm going to introduce Debbie Griffith and Honey Ray. They're both associated with Henrico Doctors, and Debbie's been here before, so we're welcoming her back.
Thank you, Marianne. So actually, I've known when Marianne's husband was alive, he actually was my OB and delivered my first child. So I have a pretty good connection with them. So both Honey and I are what's called advanced care planning facilitators. We're registered nurses at Henrico Doctors Hospital, and we have an extensive intensive care background. So we use our knowledge to help guide folks in making decisions for future medical care.
Turn it on first.
I'm not very good with this. So we're going to show you a quick video with Brian Williams. It's about a conversation. This program that we're actually trained in how to have these conversations is out of Respecting Choices in La Crosse, Wisconsin. And I think we've got a little bit of a brief little ad that's going to pop up first, so just be patient with us.
Nobody, they were 70. Interesting. It's both the electric and the gas stuff. Yeah. Quite the paradox. So JJ storage?
Electric for short trips, gas for long. It really is both. The first ever Lexus RX plug-in hybrid.
Sorry about that. We just need the picture up here. So I don't know if you remember Rock Center from years ago. This was working when we were testing it before. Okay.
People come to the emergency room to have their lives saved.
Resuscitation complete? Good.
But as Americans live longer and longer, the emergency room is not the best place to begin a conversation about how you want to live the rest of your life, or even how you want to die.
You know where you are?
Tough choices about which treatments and how much treatment become a guessing game, often powered by guilt. Palliative care specialist Carrie Lapp.
One family member may say, no, we need to do this. We have to do everything. And another family member then is saying, we just have to make her comfortable.
But that rarely happens in what might just be the best place to die in America, La Crosse, Wisconsin, home to Gunderson Lutheran Hospital. Here, an astounding 96% of the patients have a game plan for life and death. It's called an advanced directive. It starts with a very tough, very honest meeting they call Next Steps.
Tell me what you know about Paul's condition.
He's not going to get better. And we know that.
Paul, what do you hope for with your current plan of care?
Give me as much time as I can get. But keep me comfortable.
Paul and Jean Pearson have been married 21 years, a second marriage for both. This is what real love and devotion looks like.
If you were having a good day, what would that day be like?
I'd probably be fishing.
You'd be fishing.
And she'd be with me. She's more important to me than anything.
Paul Pearson has inoperable lung cancer. He and Jean don't want there to be any doubt about how he wants to live out the rest of his life.
This discussion.
So at this meeting, run by Jackie Hartman, a nurse practitioner, Paul and Jean faced their decisions and fears head on. We were there to witness the process, which is as emotional as it is profound.
Paul, what worries you about your illness? What fears do you have?
Breathing is going to be a problem. And probably having to go to a nursing home.
What about going to a nursing home?
It's being stuck there. I don't want to be a burden to her.
This is really a gift that you're giving to your family. Because at some point, if they're needing to make a decision, they can go back to this and say, yes, this is hard, this is difficult, but this is what mom or this is what dad really wanted.
One of the things they've learned here is all this talking about how you want to die, in many cases, helps people live longer and, incredibly enough, cost less. At Gunderson, patients in the last 6 months of life spend half as many days in the hospital as the national average. Bud Hammes has a PhD in philosophy from Notre Dame. He led the Gunderson team that came up with this better way to die.
The cost of care goes down because we're not taking them back to the hospital and doing all these expensive things they don't want.
Some people will see this, though, and say, it looks like they're trying to talk people out of care.
That's not the philosophy. We really want to understand the patient's perspective. We want to understand the patient's value.
The Pearsons don't feel like victims of their circumstances. In fact, just the opposite.
This is not the movie that you thought you were going to be in these years of your life.
No. But it's life. We're going to keep going as long as it can.
News for the generation of now is NBC News Now.
Thank you very much, and I just want to congratulate Mike Johnson.
There you go. So, we are actually trained in a special way of how to have these conversations. And when we talk with people, we always like to include the family in the conversation. That way, us as the facilitator can guide the conversation and assess who they would want to make medical decisions for you. And we often say, think about who is going to honor what your wishes are, and are they willing to do what you want versus what they think that you should want? And do they react well under stressful situations, and are they willing to do this? Sometimes people will name their children spouse, whatever, and that person really doesn't want to be in the decision-making seat. Also, what we do is we incorporate, and I know the attorneys left, but what we do is we incorporate your medical condition and talk about options moving forward with your medical condition as far as specific care. Very often, advanced directives talk about two things, being in a vegetative state or a terminal illness, and very often people have other things playing in, such as end-stage COPD, heart failure, different things like that, but they're not technically terminal and they're not in a vegetative state. So really understanding all of your options to include things like CPR, things like mechanical ventilation, feeding tubes, dialysis, etc. So it's very important to incorporate the specifics of that medical condition and provide options for choices moving forward. We also talk about what gives your life pleasure. You know, what is quality of life to you? I had a woman that I spoke with the other day, and all of a sudden when I asked her that question, she just started crying. And she said, I'm just so lonely, and I really don't have pleasure in my life. So, you know, talking about that. And then we talk about wishes for future medical care, to the point where when the person is ready, we will go ahead and complete an advanced medical directive. And at Henrico Doctors Hospital, we think it's very important to have these documents, so we offer this service for free. And we've actually had some people come from Cedarfield and set up appointments and meet with us and have the conversations. And I do know that there's one person in this audience that has had that conversation with me. So hopefully it's very rewarding. These documents are not one and done, and these documents really should be for anybody over the age of 18. Children, your grandchildren, they should have these documents done, because you never know when an accident or something is going to happen and who they would want to make those decisions for them. Also, if you're not legally married and you want a significant other or life partner to be making those decisions, then you really need to get a document filled out. Very, very important. So what this does is, at any age, any time, it supports the person's wishes for future medical care. It's written in the document, and when Honey and I do the documents, we're very specific. And we'll even write in the document what that person's acceptable quality of life is and what they would or would not want done, so that it's very definitive in that document. So if you don't want to be on a ventilator longer than 7 days, we will write that in there. Otherwise, the options and decisions are left up to your medical decision maker, or we call it healthcare agent. We also suggest that your document, your advanced medical directive, should be reviewed with the 5 Ds. Every decade, anytime there's a death of a loved one, because you could have your deceased spouse or family member or whatever listed down as a medical decision maker, and they're no longer in your life. So always make sure that it gets changed. Anytime there is a do-over, remarriage or divorce, you would want to relook at your document. And then anytime you have a new disease diagnosis or a decline of your current disease state. So remember the 5 Ds. Your advanced medical directive you should give to people in the family. I often tell people, you know, take a picture of it on your cell phone, that way you have it. Please, please, please don't put it in your safe deposit box, because sometimes we may need that on a Saturday, Sunday, or holiday, and we're not going to be able to get in touch with a bank or get access to your safe deposit box. So share those documents. Anything to add with that, Honey? Okay. And then also, your goals, your wishes are going to change over your lifetime. Think about when you were back at the age 18, and then maybe when you're 40, and then maybe when you're 70. or have a decline in your disease state, your goals are going to change. Your acceptable quality of life is going to change. So it's an ongoing conversation, and by having it with a trained facilitator, it can walk you through and your family through the conversations. So it talks about identifying your medical decision maker. We talked about this. Tell me what you understand about your medical condition. Tell me more. So, because very often what we find is people really don't understand. You know, they'll tell us I have a weak heart. Well, what does that mean? Well, I don't know. You know, that's just what my doctor says. So we talk about it more in depth as far as that condition. What does living well mean to you? Any spiritual or cultural beliefs that are important to you in making decisions or how you want to live the rest of your life. And then what your goals would be if you had a permanent brain injury, what your wishes would be for that situation. And then also we talk about, like I said, CPR and dialysis, organ donation, etc. So you all, if you picked up some forms in the back, there were 2 pieces of paper, and on one side is this chart, because I found the last time I was here it was hard for you all to see it. So this talks about the various forms that we have out there. So an advanced medical directive is your wishes for future medical care. It does not say that you're a DNR. It does not say anything aside from what your wishes are for medical care and who you would want to make your medical wishes if you cannot do so yourself. This is a document that you need to fill out yourself. Your spouse or somebody else cannot fill out this document. So if you have lost capacity for any reason, someone else cannot do this document. I did have someone talk to me earlier about elder orphans, and I call those people an elder orphan because they're by themselves. They have no more family. So completing a document, even if you didn't have anybody to put in as far as making medical decisions for you, you can still complete the other parts of the advanced medical directive and be very specific as far as what your wishes are. The other document is a do not resuscitate. So I like to think of this as allowing a natural death. And when Honey and I talk to people, we say, if your heart were to stop and your breathing were to stop and you died, we need to have a conversation with you about what your wishes are. We can allow a natural death, or we can have a conversation about CPR. And so in the hospital, if someone decides that they want a natural death and they do not want chest compressions, breathing tube put down, their heart shock medications, then the doctor would write what's called a do not resuscitate. As soon as you leave the hospital, though, that do not resuscitate is no longer effective. You can tell the doctor that you want to do not resuscitate, or your healthcare agent can have that conversation with the doctor as far as a do not resuscitate. A durable do not resuscitate is in the next form. That's the DDNR. This form is actually a piece of paper that will follow you wherever you are in your journey in the healthcare system or if you're at home. This document would be filled out by the person and signed by a doctor. This is a doctor's order. If you were out in Walmart and you had a durable do not resuscitate in place, we would definitely talk with you about getting some jewelry and whatnot to identify that you have this durable do not resuscitate. But if you have this form or you have the jewelry, which I'll go into in just a minute, and you collapse in Walmart and your heart stops, that is a doctor's order that EMS will follow. Without that documentation or jewelry, they will perform CPR on you. An advanced directive, again, does not say that you're a do not resuscitate. It's a doctor's order. If I signed a durable do not resuscitate and I lost capacity, my husband, as my medical decision maker, could not rescind it by law. It stays as is. No one can rescind it. So very often, sometimes people want to protect themselves because they feel that their next of kin or healthcare agent, whomever, might change it once they lost capacity. So this form, if you signed it in 2010, as long as you have not revoked it, that form is still good. You need to share that form wherever you go in the healthcare system, and you need to provide copies of that form to your healthcare agents. The next form is a post form, and again, you have a copy of it on one of the pieces of paper. It says sample on it. This post form actually takes into consideration your care when your heart stops, which is your CPR, do not resuscitate, and care that you would want while you're still alive. So if you look at that piece of paper, the middle section B talks about interventions, medical interventions, and then it gives you comfort measures, limited additional interventions, and then full interventions. Very often, if people choose comfort measures, that's more hospice care, okay? Staying at home, keeping you comfortable, and only bringing you back to the hospital if comfort measures cannot be met. Limited interventions, if you look at that section, basically what it says is you're willing to come to the hospital, you're willing to get care, but you do not want a breathing tube put down into your lungs, and you do not want to go onto a ventilator. And some people absolutely don't want that. That's a choice. And then full interventions would be that you give all the care needed to keep you alive. This post form is a value neutral form, so you don't assume that, just because somebody has a post form, they don't want care given. You can have full care, you can have CPR, you can have feeding tubes, etc. The next section under section C talks about artificial nutrition, and it says, I don't want a feeding tube, or I would be okay with a feeding tube short term, or I would be okay with a feeding tube long term. This is a national form, and again, the first section, section A, is regulated by the Virginia Department of Health. So again, if that is marked as a do not resuscitate, that means that you are a do not resuscitate. You don't need the other do not resuscitate form. And this form is honored by medical professionals and EMS. This is a picture of what the durable do not resuscitate form looks like. Again, if you're capable, we would mark number 1 saying that you're capable. If you're capable, then you would have to sign the form. Even if you have problems with signing, we can get around that, but it really protects you if you sign the form yourself. If you're incapable of signing the form, then we would check down into the next 3 boxes. Do you have an advance directive, etc. And then your healthcare agent or medical power of attorney would then sign the form. This is the post form, and the post form actually has a front and back, and on the back it has all the laws and regulations regarding the form, and I just wanted to cut down on pieces of paper for you, so I didn't make copies of that. This is the Virginia Do Not Resuscitate jewelry. You can either get a necklace or bracelet. So remember I said, if you have a durable Do Not Resuscitate form, and you don't want CPR performed, and you're going out of your house, you run the risk of having CPR performed if you do not have jewelry. So what you would need to do is, and again, I have information in your packet about how to go about getting these forms. There's only 2 places in Virginia that Virginia authorize completing or making someone a DDNR necklace or bracelet. If you have that on, that's as valid as having the doctor's order form in your hand. Questions?
I was told that it's sufficient to keep a copy of your DNR in your wallet.
You can, but I'll tell you, the EMS are not going to look in your wallet while they're performing care. Their first priority is to go ahead and stabilize you and get your heart restarted. But if you have the necklace or bracelet on, they will see that when they start doing CPR or needing to start an IV. It's good to have it, but they're really not going to look there very much. Any other questions? There's a hand over here.
Can this form post substitute for medical directive?
In some situations, yes. The one thing that this post form does not do is it doesn't identify who you would want to make medical decisions for you. So remember I said before, advanced care planning is a continuum. It's not a one and done. Very often we'll complete an advanced medical directive for somebody initially, and then as their condition changes, they may decide that, repeated visits to the hospital for breathing or whatever, they want to go ahead and put something more permanent in place and also to protect themselves. So oftentimes when Honey and I have conversations, we'll do an advanced medical directive if there's not one in place, and then we'll complete a DDNR or post form. Did that answer your question?
You mentioned something about revoking an advance directive, or does that have to be done legally some way, or is it like a will and the most recent one is effective?
Sure. So most people, when they're looking at changing their advance directive, they just do a new one because they're wanting to update, change their medical decision maker, change their wishes on that form. But you can write on your piece of paper your advance medical directive revoked, put your name, the date. The caveat with that is if it's on file in other places, they may have it. So when we get consults to see people, we'll always look at our healthcare system to see if we have a document. We'll go visit the person and say, we have a copy of a document on file. Can we talk about it to make sure it's your most current document and it's still meeting your wishes? Because people can change hospitals, they can complete new documents, things like that. Over here.
Are you saying that the only bracelet or pendant is like the ones that there's a Virginia, it's a legal one? You can get them other places that just say do not resuscitate.
Correct, and they should not be following that, because what has to be done is when you want a necklace or a bracelet, a DDNR, the company actually has to see the doctor's order form before they're going to do it. So think about going to your local store and you can have a bracelet made and have something engraved. EMS is not going to know that that's a valid, they're going to know that that's not a valid bracelet, and they're not going to honor technically what your wishes are. This is done to protect you because anybody can go anywhere and get a bracelet, but the EMS squads are taught to only honor the ones that are legally made. Now, if you live in Virginia and you're going down to Nag's Head for vacation and you have a Virginia DD&R necklace or bracelet on, they will honor that. Because on the back, it will have the doctor's name, the doctor's phone number, and your information engraved on it. So it's really to protect you. It is also, I think it's a misdemeanor for people to not be truthful in that somebody has do not resuscitate if that patient comes in. So they can get into trouble if that's found out. So, any more questions? Thank you, honey, and I will be around after if you have any specific questions. Yes.
Can you mention how important it is for a lot of families to even bring their children in?
Oh,
on the same page?
yeah. So Mary Ann was actually saying, could I talk about how important it is to bring your family in so that everybody's on the same page? You know, nowadays we have a lot of divided families. You know, if everybody is on the same page and knows what their wishes are, as you saw in the video, it really makes honoring someone's wishes so much easier. It's still hard to lose a loved one, but if you have the conversation and everybody is aware, you know, families at this point in time should be pulling together when you know there's something serious going on with a loved one. And if people are not on the same page, then you start fights, and you know it's just so difficult. We see so many families not in connection with each other when they should be there supporting each other. Any more questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Our next topic is hospice. And Brittany Dixon is here from Traditions Hospice. That is a hospice service that is used here at Cedarfield. And it's going to explain what hospice is and what they do and all the ins and outs. A lot of people think it's only the last week of life. A lot of people think it's only if you have cancer. And they are the people that are used, one of the groups that is used here at Cedarfield in healthcare. So I'm going to welcome Brittany Dixon and Mary Gibson from Traditions Hospice.
Hello, I'm Brittany. I'm the branch director with Traditions Health, which is hospice. I know health throws off people a little bit. We were formerly Hospice Community Care, so y'all may remember us through them. We were acquired in 2020 by Traditions Health. Dr. Shear, if y'all are familiar with her, she is one of our directors, or one of our medical directors with our company. Okay, so what is hospice? So medical care for people with an anticipated life expectancy of 6 months or less when cure isn't an option and the focus shifts to symptom management and quality of life. We have an IDG team, so you have different disciplines that can be involved, and that's all options up to yourself and your family. We have social workers, we have chaplains, we have the RN case managers, as well as CNAs. And it doesn't take away the care that Cedarfield provides, or if you're at another facility or at home, it would not take away the care that you're currently getting. It would just be added care to help with making sure you're comfortable, making sure you have a quality of life, and that you're getting your symptoms managed. I know a lot of times people believe that if you go on hospice that you're going to die within a week, you're going to pass within a few days, which is not necessarily true. A lot of times, we do have patients that come on kind of later in service, and we don't get to get to know that patient well enough and the family well enough to form that bond and know their exact wishes. We also have patients a lot of times that will graduate from hospice and end up in, basically they come off services and they're doing better because they're getting all this great quality care. And, it's no limit on how many times you can be on hospice services, just as long as you meet the criteria. Sorry. So our services are 24 hours a day. Our services are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if, say the doctor's not here and, you need to talk with someone because you're having symptoms that are not controlled, you can give hospice a call, and we have a nurse on call 24/7. So they can come out to you if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, if it's Christmas Day. It really, doesn't matter as long as you say, you're calling and you have issues or you need something that needs taken care of, then the nurse will come out to you, and they should be to see you within the hour. You want to talk about anything?
Sure. So the only medical care that includes bereavement care, which is available during the illness, it's also available after you pass. Bereavement is provided for the family as well as the individual on hospice care. A Medicare benefit to which all Medicare enrollees have the right. Hospice care is also covered by most private health insurance at varying levels.
Question. Is it covered by Medicare Advantage?
I don't know who I'm speaking to, sorry. So Medicare covers all of hospice. There are, secondary insurances. Some people don't end up having coverage. So what we do is we just would run what we call HICA to see what is covered. There's over 34 hospices in the state of Virginia, so there's multiple hospices you can choose from. There are some insurances that we do not cover, but if we do not cover it, a lot of times there's other hospices that we can talk with or send you to help with that. But it's very rare that we don't cover it. It's typically for your younger generation. So as I said, it's 24/7 care. We can take care of you from your home, a facility, the hospital. If you're in the hospital, a lot of times it's going to be for what we call GIP services. That means there's a symptom that's not being managed. So of course the doctor there makes all those orders, and we come in different disciplines and just kind of maintain with that doctor. We do not take the place of your doctor. You have the choice of, if you want to continue with your primary care doctor, of course, there's still going to be the person that we would contact to make those changes. We're just that added help. And it doesn't mean that we get rid of all your medications. We will make suggestions on what the doctor feels that is no longer needed at this time. However, that is your choice to continue those medications. A lot of medications we do cover if it has to do with pain, symptom management, anxiety, any kind of regimen for that, but we don't cover any curative medications. So if you're on, say you have cancer and you're on cancer treatment and you have a medication that if it's helping your symptoms and not necessarily prolonging your life, then yes, there's possibilities of continuing that if it's helping a symptom, but we don't cover anything that's going to be curative. So basically it would be if you have a medication, you've exasperated all other options and you just don't want to go through that route anymore, and you're just ready to be comfortable and live the rest of your life, with a good quality of care. So, of course, as far as who can receive hospice, a lot of times, you know, some doctors will tell you, you know, we've went through all these different treatments and, you know, there's really nothing else that we can do. And then you can kind of go from there. The doctor can make the order, or if you're in the hospital and the doctors go through everything with you, you know, and your wishes. But anytime that you have a question, you can always reach out to a hospice and we can give you more self-centered depending on your situation.
How does someone initiate hospice care? So many individuals and families can benefit from hospice care, but are unaware of how to assess hospice services. Some are afraid to discuss it. Hospice can be a very scary word. Everybody hears the word hospice and you automatically think that your life is ending at that moment. That's, like Brittany said, that's not the case. You can talk to your physician about it. You can call a company, a hospice company, a local company. Somebody can come out and talk to you about it. Those are some of the ways that you can talk about hospice and maybe see if you are eligible for the care. If you're in the hospital, you can talk to the physicians there as well.
Hospice also covers certain equipment. If you need a hospital bed, wheelchairs, walkers, medical supplies such as oxygen. If you have any, you know, skin tears or wounds, catheters, that's all covered by hospice. We do provide light therapy, speech services. If you know you're having issues at end of life with swallowing, then we would have, you know, the speech therapist come in to make sure, you know, do we suggest a downgraded diet, and ultimately that is your decision. If you are on hospice and you know that, you know, I need to be on a downgraded diet, but, you know, for my quality of life, I would like to continue with a regular diet. But that's something that, you know, we can provide for short-term services. We also provide respite care if you're living in your home and you're not, you know, being cared for at the facility. We provide once a month. We can provide 5-day respite stay for caregiver burnout. If your family is taking care of you in the home and they need, you know, just a recoup, then it's paid for by Medicare or Medicaid to go, or hospice to go to respite for 5 days every 30 days. And of course, if you are on hospice, we would not be providing any medications for treatment, because at that point you're still trying to seek aggressive treatment of your disease. And anytime that you say you have a fall and you need staples or something that our nurses cannot provide in the home, then we would suggest you go into the hospital, getting that work done, and then going back to the facility. That doesn't automatically mean that you need to revoke services, but anytime anything like that happens, we would contact you or your family to figure out, this is what happened, what would you like to do?
Where is hospice care provided? So like we stated, you can have hospice care in your home with a caregiver. You can also have it at a facility, like Cedarfield. You would still be getting the quality of care that you are receiving from here, but we're just an added care that would come in. You can also have it in a hospital in some cases, like Brittany said, with a GIP. Also, like we stated before, who pays for hospice care? Hospice is covered under Medicare. In most states also it's covered under Medicaid. A lot of private insurances as well. Like we said, if there's a private insurance and we may not cover it, then we can reach out to another company that will. There's 34 of us in the state of Virginia, and somebody is likely to cover. There's also veterans programs for hospice too, that you can get through the VA. Those will cover the hospice care as well.
Also, it's no contract with hospice. At any time, if you decide that, hospice is not what I thought, it's not what I want right now, you can revocate at any time. There's no contract. You could go on hospice services today and you could revoke tomorrow or tonight. So it's not something that you are contracted in, and if you get in, you decide hospice isn't, I'd like to do aggressive treatment, you can revoke at any time. Also, you can switch hospices at any time if you're not satisfied. Questions?
Is a request for hospice care always initiated by the patient, or can a family member, under any circumstance, say, so-and-so needs hospice care?
So if the family member is your power of attorney and they reach out and they have the paperwork, then family can request for it, yes. But ultimately, if you're your own power of attorney, you make that decision. She's going to ask me a hard question.
So I'll be nice.
Thank
In
you.
our conversations, Honey and I cover hospice care and whatnot. Very often, as you mentioned, people are very adverse to the term hospice.
Right.
So therefore, providers will use palliative care. Can you explain the difference between palliative care and hospice care?
So with palliative care, you are still able to continue with curative treatment. You won't receive CNA or caregiver or really nurse visits. You're basically going to be supported with the nurse practitioner as well as a social worker. You do not have to be terminally ill and be 6 months or less to use palliative services. But with hospice, you do have to have a diagnosis of what the doctor feels would be 6 months or less if it continues at the course of your disease, continues to decline at the rate that it's currently.
That wasn't hard.
I'm not a speaker, sorry. Any other questions?
This concludes the program. Everyone that spoke, there's information on the back table for cards for the lawyers, there's cards for Debbie Griffith and the Henrico doctors, and there's information from Traditions Hospice with contact numbers back there also. Thank you.